Hi folks, welcome to Retiring Well. Listen, got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about the qualifications you need to be looking for when you're looking for an advisor. Tax planners versus tax preparers, two different things. Income laddered approach, just one other approach to income planning. IRAs versus Roth IRAs, and answering that question, when can I retire? So folks, stay tuned, got a lot for you.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
Qualities to look for in an advisor. What are they? Well, the first one you want to have in that advisor is experience. Folks, this is very important. When I first got involved in financial services, it was in the late 90s, and I'd never experienced a down market before. All of a sudden comes along 9/11, 9/11, it's 2000. I watched the market drop to almost half its value in a 2.5-year period. That was very important for me to have to experience because in all my training, they talk about market volatility, but I had no idea the markets could be that volatile. And so having the experience of having to have a walk through that was very, very important. 2008, the credit crash. Another time, it dropped to almost half its value. This time only in a 15-month period. Very important for me to have to live through that. Now, by that point, I was much more experienced because I'd already experienced a market downturn. So I, knew they could come along. I knew the risk people were taking, and I had them positioned appropriately. So having the right experience is very important. I remember as a young man, the only time I said experience didn't matter was when I didn't have any, right? So very important to have that. The next thing you want to look for in an advisor is, do they really have your best interests in mind? Now, this is a little harder to determine because, if they're trying to sell you something, they're obviously giving you all the positives of what they're trying to sell you. But how do you really know they have your best interests in mind? The best way I think you can tell is know the kind of questions they're asking you. Are they really, really concerned about what you need or want? And you can tell by the questions they ask. If you walk in and all they do is start talking about what they do and how they do it, and this is why we do it, but they never ask you anything about yourself and how you feel about things, what experience maybe you have, maybe some experience that you had where the market dropped to half its value and you said, hey, I don't ever want to see that for me. So you can kind of tell by the way they kind of ask the questions and whether they're really listening. The other thing you want to maybe look for in an advisor is, are they independent or not? Are they just selling one company's products? If they're just selling one company's products, they're probably not going to be independent, meaning they're really trying to just push that one product. But if they're independent, maybe they can sell from a vast array of financial companies with a vast array of financial instruments. More likely, they're going to be more independent, aren't they? Because they're not just selling one company. The other thing you want to look for is communication. Are they regularly calling you, talking to you, or educating you on what's going on in the markets? Very important. Number one complaint we get with people coming in to our offices, they didn't call me, they don't talk to me. So very important that they communicate with you as well. Hopefully these are all good qualities you want to look for in an advisor. Give us a call if you're not getting that. We'll show you what we're doing, how we're doing it, most importantly what you want, so we can help. Folks, in that segment, when I was talking about, having the experience of having two big market drops, that one from 2000, 2002, and then 2008, both dropping to more than half their value. That's huge because having that experience to know that those kind of things can happen plays into the planning. Because if I've got a plan that gets decimated because something like that happens, then I want to have some things in place that's going to avoid that. You look at this last March, boy, I've never seen anything like that. In just a little over a 2-week period, it dropped more than 30%. We haven't had anything like that since the Great Depression. So, and a real testament to most people's portfolios is how much of a hit they took in that period. So, I challenge a lot of people, if you want to see how much volatility you're taking, go back to your March statement and look how much it dropped. That's going to tell you. If it dropped as much as the market did, if it was over 30%, then I'm going to tell you, you're all in the market and you're taking a lot of risk on. I like to think when you're trying to pick an advisor, the way I try to test myself in this is anytime I find myself trying to tell somebody about a financial instrument or a product, what I want to be careful to do is always, communicate the pros and the cons. Sometimes the cons are things people can live with. Sometimes they're not. And so, understanding that, showing them a lot of different scenarios or things they can look at and communicating the pros and cons and getting a feel back from them of what things they can live with and what things they can't is huge in working in the client's best interest, especially having them know. I don't want to be caught, giving them a financial instrument and all I'm talking to them about is the pluses. Every financial instrument has some pluses and minuses associated with it. I think of this example, if I walked into a car dealership and the dealer initially, or the salesperson, takes me to the car he thinks I should be in before he ever even asks me what I wanted, well, I'd surely not believe that salesman was working in my best interest, right? No different than when you're looking at a financial advisor. Make sure they're asking you all the pertinent questions. Make sure you're asking them if they're presenting something that you're getting all the pros and cons. So, matter of fact, a good question to ask back is, what's the downside to what you're showing me, right? And then and force that person to tell you that. So anyway, I want you to stay tuned because next segment I'm going to be talking about tax planners versus tax preparers and then the difference between IRAs and Roth IRAs. So stay tuned.
Professional fishermen have a game plan. Knowing what lures and what bait to use is key. As you can see, we aren't professional fishermen, but at Northern Michigan's Centennial Wealth Advisory, we are professional financial advisors. And just like a good fisherman, we have a plan, a holistic approach for your financial future, using income planning, tax planning, estate planning, wealth management, and healthcare planning to help you plan to retire well. We have lived in Northern Michigan all our lives, and we have offices in Traverse City, Gaylord, Petoskey, and Cadillac. Give Centennial Wealth Advisory a call or visit us at cen-wealth.com and let us help you plan to retire well.
Hi, welcome back. Now listen, in this segment, I want to talk about tax planning. All right, now there's a big difference between a tax planner and a tax preparer. The best way for me to illustrate this is think about tax season. When do you have most of your income tax documents? Wouldn't you agree that whether you open up the mail that says important tax information or not, that mostly everybody's got that by at least the middle of February, right? And then I can tell you that most people like to have their taxes done by April 15th. So if they're getting most of their documents by middle of February and they want it done by April 15th, how much time is that for most preparers to get all the tax returns done? Literally only 2 months. Now think about that. How much tax planning do you think they're doing in that 2-month period? Now, I had my own tax and accounting practice for over 25 years, and I can tell you during that 2-month period, I was just trying to get taxes out the door. I used to pride myself on giving people, advice, maybe looking at some observations, maybe showing some things they could do to save money. But the kind of tax planning I'm talking about, running mock returns and strategizing and that kind of thing, wasn't happening in that period. So a lot of people think they've got a tax planner, but really all they got is a tax preparer. Now, what's involved in income tax planning? Now, for most people that we work with, soon to be retired folks, the kind of tax planning we're talking about is really tax bracket optimization. If somebody's got Social Security income, maybe they got pension income, maybe they got part-time employment, maybe they still got wages, and now they have to take money out of the IRA, that's right on top of all that other income. What bracket do they find themselves in? And if there's any room in that bracket, that is a great opportunity to do what's called Roth conversions. You know, that the idea that we're going to pay the tax on the IRA and convert it over to a Roth IRA. Now, let's say I'm in that, let's say 22% tax bracket. I'm always going to be there based on all my other income. And I know when I take money out of my IRA, it's going to fall in that bracket. What I'm conceding is that Uncle Sam now has got a 22% interest in my IRA. I have a partner in that account. So knowing that if I've got any room in that bracket, why would I not go ahead and accelerate money out of the IRAs, convert it into a Roth, pay the tax on it at the 22% rate, and convert it, because I'm basically going to pay that no matter what. If tax rates ever go up in the future, well, guess what? I've saved, I've got it out of there early, growing in a Roth, tax deferred. Now, IRA exit strategies is another thing. How do I get that partner out? Well, Roth conversion's one way. How about life insurance? If I know Uncle Sam's going to get 22 cents on the dollar, what if I had a life insurance policy there to pay it off Uncle Sam, maybe when the first spouse died? So tax planning, there's a lot involved in it. Encourage you, if you're somebody that does not have a tax plan and you want one, then give us a call. We'd be glad to sit down and see if you're not a Roth conversion candidate. Hi, welcome back. Listen, in this segment, I want to talk to you about IRAs and Roth IRAs and kind of some of the main differences between the two. When you put in or contribute to an IRA, you get a tax deduction, okay? That means you're not having to pay tax on that contribution. And you get what's called tax deferred growth, meaning it's that money in that IRA is growing tax deferred. You're not having to pay tax on that. But by the time you get to the distribution phase, now it's fully taxable, because you have to understand this is money that's never been taxed. And so now as you take out Uncle Sam's there, they want their share, okay? In a Roth IRA, it's a little bit different. You're putting in with after-tax dollars, meaning you're paying the tax on the money going up front. But like an IRA in the sense that you get tax-deferred growth, okay? It's going to grow and you're not going to have to pay tax on that part. But the beauty of a Roth IRA is once you get to the distribution phase and now have to take money out, it's not taxable. Okay? Now there's some qualifications that you have to reach in order to take the money out, but once you get to that retirement age and you're pulling out, it's going to be tax-free. Highly advantageous, right? Especially in tax planning. Now, the concept would be if I'm in my working years and maybe in a high income tax bracket, having that tax deduction is highly beneficial, so I might want to be more apt to put into an IRA. All right. The idea being that I save at this rate and then lo and behold I might be in a lower bracket later on, maybe when I retire, so I save at this rate, pay at this rate. Highly advantageous. But if I'm a younger taxpayer, maybe I don't have that high income yet, I'm just kind of building up my career, I'm already in a low bracket, maybe a Roth IRA might be more advantageous because, you know, again, with a Roth IRA, I don't need to save at that high rate. So I'm in a low bracket, probably going to be in a low bracket by retirement. So I don't need that tax deduction. But what I do want, I've got all these years that I can have that money grow tax deferred so that when I pull it out at retirement, now it's tax free. Highly advantageous maybe for that person. Now, there's a lot of what you call 401ks out there. Okay, these are company plans that the employer puts into and the employee can put into, right? Now, a lot of these plans will have features where they have a pre-tax method and they have a Roth IRA option that you have available. It's important to understand that the employer portion that goes into those plans, the match as they call it, that has to go into a pre-tax plan, meaning it has to be where you don't have to pay tax on their contribution, so that's go pre-tax. But you have the choice of picking pre-tax or Roth IRA. So maybe for somebody like you might want the company put their part in, their match, but you put into a Roth IRA part, especially if you're in that low bracket. Now folks, understanding the difference between an IRA and Roth IRA is very important. I mean, a Roth IRA is really nice once you get to retirement, especially in tax planning. So if you're somebody that's got, got some of these monies and maybe those different buckets and you want to see which one might be more advantageous to you, then I encourage you, give us a call and we'll help you through that.
Hi, welcome back. Folks, when I was talking about the, tax preparers versus tax planners, no kidding. Most preparers and taxies, they got 2 months to get all those returns out. And it is impossible to be able to run those mock return scenarios and do the kind of planning you'd want to do. So my advice to you is if you want that kind of planning, do it after tax season, right? In the fall when the accountants relaxed and they've got most of their returns behind them. It's probably the weakest area of planning I see out there when it comes to, most people's retirement planning. That's one area that a lot of advisors don't go to. They'll tell the client to go talk to their preparer, but then their preparer is not doing the kind of planning that kind of lines up with, retirement planning where, we're trying to do that tax bracket optimization. I mean, most tax preparers, they think the name of the game is to have you pay as little tax as possible, right? But if there's reasons to accelerate income by taking IRA to Roth IRA and things like that, you're going to want to do that. So important to know that. Understanding you have a partner in your IRA is big. It's kind of hard to write that check when you're converting an IRA to a Roth IRA, right? You got to pay the tax on it. And when you're recognizing you're writing that check, it doesn't feel very good. But it's important because knowing that partner was already in that account anyway, it wasn't really your money, right? Even if I'm in that low bracket, 12% bracket, and that's the one Uncle Sam's going to get every time I take money out of that IRA, was that 12% ever mine? Not so. So why wouldn't I get it out of there and get him bought out sooner than later? So, IRAs were great when you're working, right? If you're in those high earning years and you need a tax deduction, they're fantastic. But when you get to retirement, if that's the only asset you have, boy, it can be tax planning very hard because anytime I need any income to supplement, whether it's pension, Social Security, if it's all in an IRA, then every time I'm pulling out of that IRA, it's a taxable event. What I love to see when people get close to retirement is having all kinds of buckets of money. Some IRA money, some Roth IRA money, maybe some savings money that's been, building after tax. Having different buckets that we can pull income from when we're doing our planning is a huge benefit. So, for you younger people out there, thinking about these kind of things way ahead of time makes sense. If you've got that 401k and you're in that lower bracket and they allow you to put into a Roth IRA, man, why wouldn't you be doing that? But, I had the opposite situation happen with people that are in their working years. They're making really good income. They've heard about Roth IRAs and Larry, I've got this option in my 401k. Shouldn't I be, putting money into that? And I'm like, I know it feels good. You want to build that bucket up, but think about it. You're in your high earning years. By putting in that Roth IRA, you're not saving on those dollars. So, you definitely want to keep that in consideration. How about we do this? How about we take advantage of the pre-tax while we can and you get the tax savings, and somewhere down when you stop working, let's employ some tax planning and see if then we can't start converting when maybe you have some of that lower bracket available to you. So again, love it when people come in with all elements of IRA, Roth IRA, and savings money so we can, better handle that planning. So hopefully you found some value in this. I want you to stay tuned because in the next segment, I'm going to talk about the income laddered approach and then answer that question, when can I retire? So stay tuned.
Hi there, my name is Nick Greenman. I'm one of the financial advisors here at Centennial Wealth Advisory. Brand new to the Gaylord office. I'm here full-time now, and I'll also be commuting back to the Petoskey office as well. I'd love to hear your story and learn if I could help you manage your retirement needs.
Hi, welcome back. Listen, in this segment of Chalk Talk, I want to talk to you about what we call the laddered strategy, okay? This is a way in which you can structure a portfolio to get the maximum results, especially if you're taking income in retirement. All right. First of all, what you want to do is segment a certain amount of money aside for just the first 5 years. Okay. So let's say I'm wanting to take 5% from a portfolio. Let's just use that as a general rule. That's going to be basically 25% of my portfolio. Okay. So I segment that aside. Now, because that's short-term in nature, because I need it in the first 5 years, how that's going to be invested is going to be highly conservative and very liquid, right? I might, in this environment, I might only get 1% on my money there, right? The second thing I want to do is then set enough aside for what we call the next 5 years after that, or the 6 to 10 years, okay? Now, again, if I'm taking 5%, that's going to be another 25% of the portfolio. Now, because I don't need this in the first 5 years, I've got 5 years in which it can grow and then take income. How that's going to be invested is probably going to be, still conservative, but a little bit more different than what I had in the first 5 years, okay? In this environment, maybe I'm only getting 2 to 3%, okay, on my money. Now, if I've structured it this way, I've got half my portfolio, right? 25% in this bucket, 25% in this bucket, and so I've got half my portfolio very conservatively invested for my income in the next 10 years. Now, everything else can go into that 10-year plus bucket. Okay? Now, because I don't need that for 10 years, I can have it probably in a traditional growth bucket, which means it's probably taking on a little bit more volatility, but because I have time, I'm going to get a little bit more growth out of it, right? Now, for this example, I said, let's just use 7%. Let's say it's in that bucket, I'm getting 7%. Using the rule of 72, which is if I take 72, divide by any rate of return, it's going to tell me how often my money doubles. So if I take 72 divided by 7, it means my money is going to basically double in about 10 years. So if I use this money for the first 5 years, it runs out. And then from 6 to 10 years, I use the rest of that money. Okay, so then it runs out. And the rest of it's in this bucket, growing by 7%. I already know that it's going to pretty much double in that 10-year period. All right? Then all I have to do is turn around and take that money, take 25% of it, put it back here for the next 5 years, then another 25% here, and again, doing that every 10 years. Can you see how this could maybe make your outcome a little bit better, especially when you're taking income? I encourage you, if this is something you want to take a closer look at, then give us a call. We'd be glad to go over this with you. Have you ever wondered when you can retire? Listen, this is a question we get asked a lot. Folks will come into our office, they'll say, listen, this is what I have. Can I retire? Folks, there's a lot of different things that have to be considered. The first thing that we have to ask is how much income a person wants. What's the lifestyle they want to enjoy when they're in retirement? We've got to start with that because I got to have a picture of how much money that's going to be and what that looks like. The second place I want to go is I want to look for sources of income. Do I have pension income? Do I have rentals? Do I want to still work part-time? Do I have sufficient savings? I want to Social Security. What's that going to look like? So I want to look for sources of income. Another thing I want to look at is debt. Am I going into retirement with any mortgage debt or any other kind of debt that might hurt my cash flow when I get into retirement? So we're going to have to look at that. And then again, savings. How much did I put away in those IRAs, those 401ks, those 403bs, those 457s? How much do I have there that I can count on? And then there's another factor we want to look at is health insurance. All right, if I'm not at the age of 65 and can receive Medicare, how am I going to bridge that gap if I'm stopping working and having health insurance? Where is that going to come from? So we want to look at that. Inflation. I might have all the means to pull together a plan today, but with inflation, is it going to be able to keep up with it over time? If I live another 20, 30 years, the purchasing power I have today is going to look much different down the road, and maybe I want to be, having that, put into my plan as well. Income taxes, if I've got all my money in IRAs and now that's the only place I can pull income from and every bit of it is going to be taxed, well, what does that look like, right? Or maybe I'm somebody that's fortunate enough to have other buckets of money, let's say non-qualified money, or what's really called non-retirement money. Or how much do I have in Roth IRAs where I can pull and not have it be taxable? And what's my tax plan as I begin to take that income? And if it's all going to be taxable, well, isn't that going to affect things as well? Can you see that there's so many factors involved in making that decision as to whether you can retire? And so I can't stress enough, having an income plan is so vitally, vitally important. You should be looking at this 4 or 5 years before you pull the trigger, just so you know what it looks like. Or if it has some deficiencies, you have ways to correct it as you approach that date. So if that's you, as you're approaching retirement, you're maybe 4 or 5 years out and you're wondering whether you can pull the trigger, then I encourage you, give us a call and we can sit down and develop some kind of a plan for you before you decide to do it.
Hi, welcome back. Listen, folks, when I was talking to you about that income laddered approach, that's just one approach. There's other approaches that we can use as well. But understand this, they all, to have good outcomes in any kind of approach, it really starts with segmenting income. I mean, if you're going to take an income and you want to protect it, then you've got to segment that aside and it's got to be invested appropriately. Then if there's any other kind of monies available, that can be, invested in a whole different way because maybe you have time on your side. But it's all going to start with, segmenting it and then separating that income. And you got to understand, in retirement planning, there's so many pieces to the puzzle. And having them all work together for you is very important. So, a lot of times what we want to do is we want to take all those pieces, where's our strengths, where's our weaknesses, what do we need to shore up, what do we need to, plan for, and making sure that all that stuff is working together. And then most importantly, a plan is not just to set it and leave it. We want to continue to monitor that plan. Year after year, we want to make sure that we're staying on track. Are we losing ground? If we put some growth rate assumptions in there, are we hitting those goals? If not, will we in another year? So very important that we want to stay on top of that. And then if there's any major changes that we're adjusting the plan accordingly. We want that plan to be a living, breathing thing, right? I see so many people get these plans, they put it on the shelf, it collects dust, and then you never look at it again. Very, very dangerous. You want to continue to monitor it. So, folks, probably the most gratifying thing for us, especially at Centennial Wealth, is being able to answer that question when you can retire. Nothing gives me greater joy when we put all the pieces together and somebody can see that they can retire very comfortably, knowing that we're going to continue to watch that and make sure that we stay on track with that. So again, most gratifying thing we can do in our planning is answer that question. If you're somebody that wants that question answered for yourself, and you're coming up on retirement and you want to see a plan, then by all means, give us a call. We would love to answer that question for you. So again, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.